Hello everybody and welcome back to another Overwatch League fan thoughts and analysis video. Today we are going over the Paris Eternal and their roster for Season 2. So we're going to jump right into this. And we're going to start, of course, by talking about their DPS. This team has 4 DPS players. 2 of them have Overwatch League experience. The other 2 do not, but they do have World Cup experience. We're going to start with Soon, the superstar DPS player from the Los Angeles Valiant. Actually from France. He left to join the Paris team, I guess because he wanted to play for Paris, because he's French. Soon, very good Widowmaker player. I'm impressed how good he is as Widowmaker. He showed up a lot when they needed him to play. He will bring a very, very, very talented Widowmaker player to this team. Played on the French World Cup team. So he proved his worth and how good he is throughout Season 1 of the Overwatch League. Moving into now Season 2, different team. He will be one of those parts of this team that is consistent and that you don't really have to worry about how good his play is. So that's what I like about Soon. I think Soon proved himself, and I'm not worried about how he plays. This roster is obviously different, and I think he will have to adjust to playing with the different players, but he will do fine. I find from what I've seen, DPS players that you bring in to play on a team they're not familiar with seem to me that they adjust pretty quickly, so that's what I've seen. But I can't that might just be certain players. But yeah, I think Soon is going to be one of the best parts of this team. He's going to be consistent, he's going to play well, and I expect him to do a lot of great things. The next DPS with Overwatch League experience is Shadowburn, who has some Overwatch League experience. I played on the Philadelphia Fusion. Didn't play a lot because EQO and Carpe were the dominant duo, and Shadowburn wasn't really needed. But Shadowburn is a very, very well-known Genji player. Plays very high-level Genji, and many consider him to be one of the best Genjis in the world. But he also, he'll play some Pharah, play some Zarya. He's got some of that projectile hero play in him. That's mostly what he is. He's a projectile player. But I'm really excited for Shadowburn to be on a new team. When Season 1 was wrapping up and I was thinking about players that I thought would be free agents, Shadowburn was like my number one. He will definitely be a free agent. He'll definitely go to a different team, and he'll definitely get signed. If he leaves Philadelphia, because if I'm Shadowburn, right, I want to play, and he knows he's not going to play behind EQO and Carpe because they're both really good, and Shadowburn's also a very good player, but his ability to play is going to be hindered by the fact that Philadelphia had 2 fantastic DPS players, and they had Snillo as well, who played pretty well. When EQO wasn't playing, they had him in instead of Shadowburn for the most part, so I think Shadowburn is going to show why he is very popular and very well known. I hope he plays very well. I would love to see him be successful, because obviously when you don't get to play a lot, it kind of wonder how good the player can be and what their true potential is in the Overwatch League. So I'm excited for Shadowburn. He's going to be awesome to watch on that Genji. And he can play some Zarya, obviously, so even if they're running triple tank, triple support, they can keep him in on that Zarya, because he might be their best Zarya. Maybe not, maybe someone else is a better Zarya, but if he's got that high level on, if he's a starter, which I expect he will be, then I would see him playing their Zarya if needed. Next, we have Nico GDH, who is a French player. He comes from Eagle Gaming in Contenders, of course, played on the French Overwatch World Cup team. He plays a lot of Genji. He plays some Diva as well. I watched he played in the Overwatch World Cup. He played one map against Canada in the semifinals, or not semifinals, quarterfinals. He played some Genji, played some Zarya, played some Junkrat. I thought he was okay. I didn't think he was crazy good in that game. Especially on Genji, he looked to be decent. He had a Dragon Blade that was okay at one point in the match, and I remember the commentators, Jake and I think it was Rush, were like, it was okay. He got some damage and he got some kills, but he didn't get a lot out of it. It was not bad though. But in Contenders, he still played some Genji. He still played some. I think he was just playing Genji from what I saw. But I was watching the Contenders finals, and he played a lot of D.Va as well as some Tracer and some Brigitte. So, and I thought his D.Va looked very, very good. I thought he was playing a very good D.Va in Contenders. So I'm curious to see if he plays some D.Va. He is teammates, or one of his former teammates is on this team. We'll get to them when we get to the supports. But I thought Nico looked pretty good in Contenders, and I thought his D.Va was pretty strong, which is obviously not necessary at all times because they have other players that will play D.Va sometimes. But I thought D.Va looks pretty good, and he seems to be pretty comfortable playing D.Va since that's what he was playing in Contenders. And it wasn't just like one match. I was going through the finals against who did they play? They played the Angry Titans, so I was going through that, and it looked like he played D.Va pretty much the whole game. Maybe a couple times he switched off, but he switched off a couple times because he also played some Tracer and some D.Va, or Tracer and Brigitte, but I thought he looked really good. But next is Danye. Danye is a Polish player. He played on the Polish World Cup team, and he also played for the Copenhagen Flames in Contenders 2018 Season 2, who did not finish that strong. Danye has not had a lot of success. Right? He hasn't played on very good teams, but while playing for Team Poland, he looked decent. He looked like one of the better parts of this team. He plays some decent Doomfist from what I saw. I don't expect him to play a lot. But he has a big hero range from what I have seen and read. I mean, if you just go on Wikipedia, his page, he's got Genji as a signature hero, Widowmaker, Pharah, McCree. So he has some hit scan play, also some projectile play. So he's got more he's got more variety in what he can play, which is always useful. I think he is going to be an interesting player to watch out for and see what he does if he plays a lot. Obviously, I don't think he will play all that often because Soon and Shadowburn will most likely be the two most common. Because Shadowburn at least has some, diversity. I don't think he's got the hit scan diversity, but doesn't really need that because that's going to be Soon's job. But I think this DPS is interesting. I think if it's a tank heavy meta, if it's a DPS heavy meta, they will definitely manage because they have all that diversity in their hero roster with their players. So it'll be helpful for them. It'll be useful for them to be able to play at the level that they can play at. And I'm excited to see what they do with this DPS roster. But let's move into the tank play. And we're going to start with the flex tank role, where we have Finzi. Now, Finzi comes from the LA Valiant, but he never really played because he played behind Space. And because of that, obviously, there's not a lot of stuff to really look at for him. Of course, he played in Contenders in 2017. He played on 1-2-3 in Contenders 2017 Season 1 in Europe. Played in the 2018 Season 1 Trials for Europe on Orglis in Hungary. But then he went to the LA Valiant and didn't really play all that often. One of his alternate IDs is even benched, so it gives you an idea. He is most likely going to be their flex tank player, but I say most likely because in reality they could have Nico playing because he had that experience on D.Va, and he's a French player. The head coach, of course, is French. He has experience playing with him. Now, I expect Finzi to play. Obviously, you signed Finzi as your flex tank. I expect him to play, but I think we might not see him playing a lot of D.Va. He might be playing Zarya in some of those team comps if they don't want Shadowburn doing it. If Finzi's a better Zarya than Shadowburn, which I believe he is, because that's one of his more signature heroes. I think Zarya is his main thing that he'd play. He obviously can play some D.Va, but I think D.Va play will most likely be Nico more than Finzi, but Finzi will definitely be the Zarya if they need a Zarya, because I think that's really where he excels. But I wouldn't be surprised if Nico or even Danye are on that D.Va role. But I think Nico most likely would play it because he has experience being the D.Va on a team. A lot like we saw with Seagull last year, where he's a DPS player, but he played a lot of D.Va, especially late in the season when Mickey was playing Brigitte. So that's the kind of stuff I'd expect to see from Finzi. The main tanks, we have Ben Best and LH Cloudy. So I watched some VODs and some games that both of these guys played in. Now, obviously, one game doesn't speak for a player and their abilities, but I wasn't incredibly impressed by either of them. I think they're probably better than what I saw. Ben Best in the World Cup on Team France did not play very well. He really struggled, especially against Note from Team Canada. Note had his way with Ben Best, and obviously Note is an Overwatch League caliber flex tank, which is important, right? Now Note doesn't speak for every flex tank player, and it also, one game doesn't speak for a player's entire ability and their entire career. But if Ben Best struggled the way he did against Note, and he does that every week, or does that against any other level of D.Va in the Overwatch League, we could see some struggle in this main tank position from Ben Best, who I expect to be the starter. He's a French player. He's the one that the coach knows the best already. And I think he has more success than LH Cloudy has had. LH Cloudy and Ben Best both come from contenders. Ben Best, though, comes from Young and Beautiful, both in Europe, obviously. LH Cloudy comes from Team Giganti, who lost in the semifinals to Eagle Gaming. They both have the same hero pool, obviously. Ben Best, I think, has more tank play that he's better at. LH Cloudy's slightly more outside the box and plays some other stuff. I think these two are high level players, and in Sideshow, even in an article, wrote that he thinks they're they're arguably the best two main tanks from Contenders EU. And I think that seeing the way Ben Best played in the World Cup against an Overwatch League player I think seeing him struggle was kind of a notice of, like, yeah, it's a very different scene. Contenders EU is a very different scene from the Overwatch League, and you can be the best in Contenders EU. That doesn't mean you're one of the best main tanks in the league. There's even a quote here from Damon, the head coach of Paris Eternal, where he said, "I brought these two players because they have value and unique qualities that are different from one to another. Ben Best is one of the best Reinhardts I've seen, and even in the Overwatch League. And LH Cloudy has a really good Winston as well as a good Orisa, because he has a smart mind for the game. Both of them have good qualities and weaknesses as well, and I have in mind to destroy those weaknesses by giving them the chance to work together." So obviously Damon has a plan that will very likely work, but I wonder how well they'll perform against some of these other main tanks, and if they'll play the way we expect them to, and the way the coach expects them to. Because I personally worry about their success, mainly because I don't think what I saw against Note bodes super well. I don't think it's the end all be all. I think that obviously there's more to a player than just how they play in one game, but Note really dominated him, and I'm wondering how that will translate over into the Overwatch League, especially when you have some really good off tanks and flex tanks in the Atlantic. You got Meko, you got Fury, you have Poco. Just that's just to name a few there. But then even obviously the rest of the league, you have a lot that are good as well. You have Space and with the LA Valiant. But obviously not all of those players you're going to play all that often. But if you're playing Atlantic teams, and there's some really good flex tanks there. Note is even one of them. I'm a little worried about that, but that's really all I have on the tanks. We're going to move on to the supports. I'm going to start with Cruz, who is a UK player. Comes from Contenders, where he played with Toronto Esports in North America. Obviously no longer exists, but that's who he played for. He's their main support player, most likely. He played on the played on the UK World Cup team, which has seen some new players join the Overwatch League, which is really cool. I'm glad the UK has some more players on Overwatch League rosters. I can't talk this morning. But I was impressed with Cruz. I thought he played very well. He's a support player. I thought he did his job well. I think he's going to be their shot caller, and he's going to be a pretty good shot caller at that. I don't really worry about what he will do. I think he will succeed in the ways that he needs to, and I think he will do his best as a support player. I definitely think he is one of those supports that I think he's probably better than some of the supports that are in the Overwatch League. Like, Cruz is probably better than Kellex. And I'm excited to see what Cruz can do. He's been given this opportunity to perform, and I think he will do a very good job. I was very impressed with him. He is their only main support player, so he will be playing a lot. But I don't expect that to be a problem. I really expect him to do really well. The next support is a flex support or an off support, whatever you want to call it, and that is Hip, another French player. He played on Eagle Gaming, who won Contenders Season 2 2018. Of course, teammates with Nico, GDH, or just Nico if you want to put it that way. And he is, of course, going to be your Zenyatta, be your Moira sometimes. I saw him play some Moira in Contenders. I didn't think his Moira was all that great. He didn't play her a lot. He kept switching off of her and going back to Zenyatta. So I really, oh god, I really don't like. I don't think his Moira is the best. But his Zenyatta was pretty good. I thought his Zenyatta was somewhat impressive, and I thought it was pretty good. Ben Best also should mention is on Eagle Gaming. So Ben Best, Nico, and Hip all have that Eagle Gaming experience. So Ben Best that's another reason why he'll most likely start, because he got that synergy with some of the other players. And Eagle Gaming also was apparently one of the best teams at triple compositions based on when people scrimmed against them. Now, of course, here they praise his Moira. I thought his Moira wasn't the best, but obviously one game doesn't speak for everything, so his Moira is going to be, I'm sure, better than what I saw in a couple moments. So that's really what I look at with Hip. I think Hip will be fine. I think he will play pretty well. His positioning is what was praised the most, and I think that speaks a lot of who he is as a player. Gray is the last support they have, their last signing, and Gray is, I think, not going to play all that often. He's going to be their backup, I'm sure. But I think he is one of those players that will just kind of be doing his job in the background. I think flex supports are the kind of thing, or off supports, whatever you want to call them, are the ones you kind of need the most as a backup, because in a way the skills translate to other positions, right? If you have a flex support that's a really good Ana, they can probably play a decent Widowmaker or a decent McCree, decent Ashe, just through the sheer fact that there's a conversion there. So Gray is going to be playing. I don't expect him to ever really play much, DPS or anything like that, or I don't expect him to play all that often in general. But he's on this team for a reason. I did not watch anything on Gray, mainly because I don't expect him to play all that often. But also, the GG Esports Academy games were just not... they were really boring, the ones that I watched. So I didn't really take a lot of notes on him. GGEA, not that strong of a team. They finished, bottom, like the 9-10 range in Contenders Season 2 for North America. When they were Optic Academy, they did pretty well in Season 1. They were semi-finalists, but they not as well in Season 2. And I was focusing more on Season 2 because it's a more recent meta. So, yeah, that's really what I kind of picked up on. I think Gray will do fine. I'm sure his ability is pretty similar to Hip, maybe slightly lower than Hip, but I'm sure he will be a very similar player in that regard. In terms of how I feel like the Paris Eternal will finish, how I feel about them as a team, I think they're pretty good. I think that where they succeed the most is, of course, the fact that they have some Overwatch League talent in that DPS spot. They have DPS depth, and they have depth in every position. They have one flex tank player, but they also have 2 DPS players that can likely play flex tank, so you're not really worried about that. You have one main support, but you have another flex support who can, if need be, play a main support role, so that's not that big of a deal. And everywhere that you look, they have what they need. They have the depth of the roster. They have 10 players, so you'd expect them to have some depth on that roster. I think this team is a well-balanced team. I just wonder how well they'll play, especially that tank line. Because translating from Contenders Europe to the Overwatch League and seeing the struggle that Ben Best, who I think is likely to be the starter, had against Note. I know I'm hammering that Note point home, but it's important to note that this guy, pun not intended there, but I'll take it, that this player is not performing the best against players who are Overwatch League players, who are Overwatch League caliber players, and he's struggling. Like, it was exceptional. Note had, the stat was something like 13% more eliminations or final blows against Ben Best than he would normally have over a tank player. It was something along those lines. So it was a telling stat that Ben Best might not be translating his skills to the Overwatch League the best, and it's something to look out for this team. But that's really my one thing to look at. I think everywhere else on the roster, they're perfectly fine, they're solid, but it's that tank line that might become a problem. But that is everything I have on the Paris Eternal. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. Comment down below what you think about this Paris Eternal roster. But with that, I'm going to get out of here. Hope you all have a happy New Year. Hope you all start the new year off correctly. And until then, and until the next video, I'm going to get out of here. So, thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you all later.